first, I think most of us expect them to do more in terms of monetary stimulus. But looking back on what happened for the first negative rate hike, rate cut that they had, right? Probably there is less of a chance now that they will make it more negative for the interest rates. And the probability is more likely to expand on its asset purchases, be it on equity related or on the more of the JGBs itself.
They're running out of road, aren't they? At a very fast pace. There's not much that they can do on the JGB front to hoover those up. So they've got to look at equity purchases now, right? And they've got to do something. They've got to do something aggressive.
Correct. Or they could have they could be looking at something quite similar to what the ECB is looking at, the TLTRO, in sort of that form itself. So that is one way of them approaching it. But I think essentially, right, they have several unique problems as a country itself, because theirs is not just on a cyclical kind of problems, but more structural.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the problem with negative rates, and you can argue in a Europe and a Japanese context, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's taking the onus of responsibility off the fiscal authorities to crack on with structural reform. Do you think that is happening in Japan?
I think it's still very difficult for monetary policy to drive the entire move to reinvigorate the economy itself. Fiscal policy has to come in somewhere, and basically what we see in the last few months is basically that the monetary policy can rescue the economy, but it cannot reinvigorate economic growth itself. Somewhere, some parts of the other parts of the economy, be it the government, be it somewhere else, has to come in, and monetary policy cannot do this alone.
One thing's for sure, though, and the base case, I'm interested to know, Alvin, from your perspective as well, we're in damage limitation mode now in Japan. Arguably, the wheels have come off Abenomics. It's all about deferring the next phase of the sales tax hike and also introducing a supplementary budget, yes?
That's correct. But for us itself, we still think that the tax hike is still coming in place unless there is a dramatic change in the economic environment in this year, say they go into a recession. And that will push...
That's not your base case?
No, we are still looking at maybe lower than 1% growth, but certainly still growth itself. That is not good, but it's better than going into contraction mode. But certainly, the stimulus measures coming in from supplementary package, right, could be on the card somewhere in the next few months or second half of the year. But for now, I think for April itself, most of us are still seeing more monetary stimulus coming in from the BOJ. But I think the question is whether they can change that tack. Instead of doing what they are doing now, could they come out with something new? Of course, like what you said, the runway is getting very, very short.
Let's be fair and let's give Mr. Kuroda the benefit of the doubt. It takes time for new policy like negative rates to cycle through the system. It's been about 2.5 months.
Correct.
Should we necessarily write off this policy? At what point in the cycle are we going to see corporates and consumers spend, not save? Because that is what negative rates are supposed to do, yes?
That's, well, you're right. It's just like, what, less than 3 months when the policy came into place. And like what the IMF in the report said, like probably it will work sometime, take a bit of time to work. There's some cautionary tone to it. But at the point right now, if you have introduced the rates and the last thing that you want to see is your currency strengthening by 10%, and if you do another rate cut, further cut itself, and your currency strengthen furthermore, right, that will significantly weaken sentiment. Whether it will work in time, nobody really knows at this current juncture. But certainly, right, if the currency strengthens further, right, that would be quite damaging for sentiment onshore itself.
Especially corporate Japan as well. So can corporate Japan handle the yen at these current levels?
I think
especially when they've assumed a lower yen, particularly the exporters.
I think at these levels, I think they still could manage it. But of course, compared to last year, this time, right, their profit levels are being hit right now. But we think that the line in the sand for Japan itself, right, is maybe at 105. At 105 itself, instead of just jawboning, right, there probably be real intervention coming into the markets.